Dear friends, I think this is an important topic. One of our briefers earlier said that we may not be facing a polycrisis, but maybe a polytunity. But when we look at the actual progress of what decision makers and countries have faced in the last 5 years, starting from the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic on fiscal systems and governments' finances across the world, what impact it had on public service delivery, followed thereafter by major conflicts and crises and attendant sanctions regimes and their impact on global economy, the impact on food, fuel, and in many agrarian economies on fertilizers. This has been a triple whammy, which coming immediately after a huge debt problem and the COVID pandemic has enormously burdened countries and their abilities to deal with crisis. So crisis it is, we cannot walk away from it. And the fact that these are polycrises is also true. Yet, of course, every crisis comes with a silver lining, and we should see how best we should probably tackle with it, and probably it is in that sense that it can be an opportunity. But if we look at the whole concept of digital public infrastructure, as a term, it did not appear in any headline until 2-3 years ago. During our G20 presidency in 2023, we crafted a digital public infrastructure framework which G20 member states accepted. The UN thereafter launched the High Impact Initiative on DPIs in September 2023 to deploy DPI in 100 countries by 2030, a laudable initiative for leveraging digital solutions to address critical development challenges. The UN also launched the 50 in 5 campaign with the goal of having 50 countries design, launch, and scale at least one component of their DPI stack within 5 years. I think these initiatives were critical. And let me also give you an idea of what were the challenges, the economic challenges that we saw, and how evolution of DPI came about in India. Within our country, our growth was unequal in terms of geographic and demographic distribution. 13 urban districts represented large metropolitan areas, and Tier 2 cities out of 788 districts were contributing to 50% of our GDP. A small percentage of the population had a significant proportion of total income. Our overall labor productivity was lower compared with other large economies. The level of formalization in the economy was lower, with a majority employed in the non-formal sector. Access to credit for business and households was an issue due to lack of formalization and significant barriers in monetizing assets, especially land and real estate. A majority of citizens did not have bank accounts and were outside the financial and banking system due to significant process barriers. And government social safety net was dependent on non-digital means to deliver assistance to citizens in need. It was a decade ago, with these kind of situations prevalent, that my Prime Minister launched a Digital India campaign focused on implementing several unique digital transformational projects. The first of these, which many of you might have heard, was Aadhaar, which all adult Indians, numbering over 1.2 billion, having a 12-digit unique biometric-based identifier that can securely and in real time authenticate one's identity. Next to come was a unified payments interface, a real-time instant payment system, allowing users to transfer money between business to consumer, business to business, peer-to-peer payments, promoting digital inclusion by reducing dependency on cash, and being completely agnostic of banks or financial service providers. Today, we have 17 billion monthly transactions with a value of over $275 billion. We have other countries where such systems have independently evolved and developed, and Brazil is a good example, where they have independently developed and deployed such payment solutions. The next to come about was bringing about financial inclusion. When you have over 500 million persons outside the financial network, how do you bring them into the fold of banking and provide financial inclusion in a reasonable amount of time? Bringing almost 540 million citizens into the financial network, into the banking network, in a very short period of time, which normally, without using technology, would have taken almost a decade, was again only possible because of deploying digital public infrastructure. This ensured that these 540 million people had access to banking facilities. They had one basic banking account. They had grounding in financial literacy, access to credit, health, and accident insurance, and access to pension facilities. Then comes in what another panelist referred to as the need to provide internet access to citizens at an affordable price. Luckily, we had a dynamic private sector that invested in the infrastructure required to provide one of the lowest cost access to mobile banking, mobile infrastructure, where the cost of data is one of the lowest in the world. This ensured that even as fixed line internet connections were expensive, internet-based access to internet was affordable. This also ensured a very quick rollout of 4G and 5G related infrastructure. So this combination of a biometric-based identification digital public infrastructure, number one. Number two, a unified payments, digital payment system that was agnostic of banking service providers. And three, a financial banking network which brought in a large number of citizens into its fold, along with access to affordable internet access for citizens that was through their mobile systems. Interlinking all of these provided the government a network for delivering government services and social security payments to citizens online by reducing all fraud and all what can be called transmission losses in delivery of government assistance. This was a huge boon during the pandemic. Because the system was in place prior to 2020, during the pandemic it was possible for the federal government in India to send assistance to 600 to 700 million people with the pressing of a button directly into their bank accounts, unmediated by any third parties. Once these building blocks were available, then other aspects of digital public infrastructure evolved. For example, the pressing need during the pandemic was for vaccinating citizens with COVID vaccines. In response, the fact that there was a national biometric-based identification system was used to leverage a health digital public infrastructure for vaccinations, COVID, specifically for COVID vaccines, which covered 2 billion people, 2 billion vaccines for 1.4 billion people in a very short period of time, making it available for every citizen to be able to schedule their vaccinations and to receive such vaccinations at the nearest health service provider. This was later expanded to include the entire range of vaccinations that the citizens were eligible for. So this was, again, a huge boon during the COVID pandemic. When India developed these digital public infrastructure, these platforms, they were not done on a patented basis, but they were done in an open source format with the entire source code on the internet making it available to all friends and partners, and indeed any commercial enterprises or governments, to use such source code for further developing it, for adapting it to their requirements, to their unique requirements. For example, a digital public infrastructure we have for education, which was again based on an open source format called Sunbird, and the digital public infrastructure was called Diksha, which was an educational platform allowing learning, personalized learning for students in 30 languages and 60 different educational boards at secondary school and higher secondary school levels. This was deployed in India, but it was made available to other friends, and in Morocco, a close friend and a partner country, they were able to adapt it to their own requirement for their own boards in their own language. And other countries too have since taken on to use such digital public infrastructure for their own use. Such DPIs have later on extended to electronic commerce, because what we saw around the world was you had digital for profit as one model, where companies were leveraging digital systems for profit. And you had digital where the concerns were primarily about privacy and other privacy-related issues. There were concerns on surveillance. So while these various focus areas on digital were prevalent around the world, my government focused on exploring how to use the digital world for development. What is it that we could do to use these new technologies and the digital platforms to leapfrog development so that things that would have taken an enormous cost and would have led to significant time to achieve outcomes, those could be compressed and those could be delivered to our citizens in a reasonable span of time. This has been the primary approach of using this. So one of the areas where we have developed, again, such digital platforms has been in e-commerce. Most of the e-commerce platforms have been in the private sector domain, developed as proprietary systems by companies for their own ecosystem, where those who do not belong to the ecosystem do not find a foothold. So the government, using the same principles of the digital public infrastructure that we have developed, based on interoperability, based on the fact that government will develop and deploy these systems and make it available to the citizens, to the economic and business actors, and to everyone who would use it, almost on a gratis basis, to develop the economy. We developed, for example, a similar digital public infrastructure for e-commerce. This was, again, the Open Network for Digital Commerce, the ONDC, a very successful platform. So any producer or any seller and buyer of either goods or services could use this platform for free. This could be your neighborhood mom and pop stores who are facing competition from the Amazons of the world and were feeling the economic heat, or it could be your taxi driver and an auto driver, a three-wheeler driver in a big urban city who is facing pressure from Uber and feels that his or her business is being lost to these large corporations. They now had an alternative platform which was inclusive and open to all, where they could come and use and sell services or buy services, sell goods or buy goods, without being tied into a locked-in proprietary platform of a private sector company that forces you to be part of their ecosystem. This was significantly impactful in giving and leveling the playing field for mom and pop stores, for small business owners, for small and medium enterprises, to leverage technology and to be able to promote their own business objectives. AI has been a useful technology in turbocharging DPI. And of course, we have another speaker who will talk about AI, but I just want to speak on AI insofar as it relates to DPI. AI systems have allowed a quicker, faster adoption of DPI, and they have also allowed greater utility for DPIs in our economic system. We have seen this in the Open Credit Enablement Network, which is an aggregator, a digital infrastructure that aggregates those who are providers of credit and those who are seekers of credit onto a single platform. This would enable all kinds of banks, financial institutions who are willing to give loans, and people who would like to access such credit and loans to be able to come there, who have the digital trail to prove their credit worthiness to take these loans. In India, this has been extremely helpful and successful because we noticed that there was a credit gap in the market of over $250 billion. And so today we have over 2 billion financial accounts with this account aggregator facility. And we have data sharing on this which exceeds 144 million, creating an open and secure digital lending framework for our entrepreneurs. In a similar manner, AI has been hugely helpful in pushing DPIs for agriculture, for Indian languages, because we do not wish technology to be only based on English platforms. We have over 21 constitutionally recognized languages. So making digital systems language agnostic was important so that people who speak different languages and use different languages have equal access to the internet without facing any linguistic barriers. So this has also helped in putting in place systems for transliteration, natural language understanding, for translations and speech recognition systems. This has also been extremely helpful in personalized learning for e-education for children, especially those who are in far and distant communities, or in extraordinary and emergency situations like during the pandemic. And finally, Indian agriculture has immensely benefited from digital public infrastructure and using of artificial intelligence for turbocharging utility of these DPI systems for over 200 million of our farmers who are able to use these digital tools for improved decision making. Just to give an example, if suddenly a farmer notices that the leaf is showing a different color, or he notices some kind of a disease onset, all he or she needs to do is to take a photograph and send it to a central database which uses AI systems to recognize what kind of disease it could be and what a farmer should do to tackle such disease. Friends, we remain committed to South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation in this. When we make available our own experience, which we have developed at scale, we recognize that our friends and partners in the Global South may not have the technological base, may not have the level of adoption immediately to be able to take it as is. So customizing these digital public infrastructure almost as a software, which they could go and deploy in pilot settings to see its implementation, and thereafter implement it at scale, is the way we approach in South-South cooperation frameworks. We have done this under the India UN Development Fund, where we have a special focus on digital public infrastructure projects. A project in Zimbabwe that we have implemented was on empowering women and youth for increased access and usage of digital financial services. This we completed 2 years ago in 2022. There is another one on Know Your Customer norms and digital identity projects, which is an ongoing project that we are doing in Malawi on resolving identification barriers for financial inclusion amongst rural population with a particular focus on women and youth. So we have a special social impact fund too that we are looking at as a government-led multi-stakeholder initiative to fast-track digital public infrastructure implementation in the Global South. I'll stop here, and I want to thank for giving me this opportunity to speak.